Hello and good evening and welcome back to THU TV here in Troia in Portugal. I am here today to speak to Daniel and Maciej, who are two absolutely awesome people and have done a lot of really cool stuff in the space of how to actually get ready for a career in crazy visual arts and magic, I believe. So Daniel is a product manager at ArtStation, and Maciej here is the co-founder of Learn Squared, which I believe is a platform for what now?
Art education.
Okay, what do you guys do and why?
So we started Learn Squared together with Ash Thorpe and Andrew Horlick, and we also had one more co-founder, Anthony Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a new art education platform. It's an online art education platform, and it's basically we're trying to get the most professional experience and our own experiences that we've gathered throughout decades of working in the industry with film and video games and whatnot, in the package that basically represents like this very good form of very good package that students can take, learn from, and then apply to their work and potentially get successful with.
When you say professional, what do you mean? What do you actually offer the students?
We try to make it as something that we would want to learn from ourselves, right? And we look at the perspective of where we were before, where we're in the middle of the road somewhere, and where we are now, and what were the challenges that we had across the board. And creating those classes, we try to sort of address those challenges for people to take and learn from, basically.
Awesome. Why is it called Learn Squared?
It's like a really long story. I think I remember being on the phone, because it's all based online. All of the founders are basically everywhere in California.
Right.
We don't live in the same place. We don't even have a studio.
Right.
It's all like, it's my house studio. But I remember being on the phone with the guys, and we've been like chatting for 2 hours, coming up with ideas, like what the name's going to be.
Right.
And like when you start a company, usually the name is the hardest thing to create. And we've been like chatting and like arguing, like what's the name's gonna be, coming up with like completely stupid names and whatnot. And I remember, I think I've mentioned like, what about like let's call it Concept Square.
Right.
And like, yeah, but we do a little more than concept art. I have like Ash saying like I do graphics design and stuff like that. It's not really concept. And I think Ash said like, what about Learn Squared? And it played to the narrative of what the school is, because one of the components of the classes, apart from just learning from the really good video material from the best in the world, basically, you also have an experience of a person that is taking the class, which is the apprentice.
Right.
Which we had not only professionals from different disciplines, but also our students to be our apprentices.
Right.
And then you can follow their journey on how they take class.
And that's where the squared bit comes in.
Exactly. And
Awesome.
that's where basically it came in. Also, it relates to the work that I did with Ash together. We worked on many film projects together, and one of them was Ghost in the Shell, directed by Rupert Sanders. And I remember like we were, being on Skype and discussing like ideas, what we're gonna do. We were designing like bike designs for the film, and we collaborated on the film together. And we were just discussing this. Like, how amazing is this? Like we're friends and we work together on the project, but we also learn from one another.
Right.
And that's also was one of the components, like why the school was created in the first place, and the squared component for the school itself. Yeah.
What does ArtStation do?
So ArtStation is a portfolio platform. So we started development about almost 4 years ago.
Okay.
We had previously built art communities before. So we built CG Society about 13, 14 years ago. That was the largest professional community at the time. Yeah. We also, our parent company builds communities. So we've built communities for Autodesk, Algorithmic, pretty much a lot of the companies in the industry. So we specialize in that sort of thing. And ArtStation was actually built as an internal product that we could use to promote our services. So yeah, 3 years later, it's exploded. So we still we have the goal really to empower artists and to actually help them change their lives through opportunity. And most of that opportunity is in the form of promoting their work to a larger viewership, and also actually being in contact with studios. So we built the ecosystem from the point of view that we have artists, and we also wanted to involve industry at the same time, so that the opportunities that are coming along to work on big games and film, like from Naughty Dog or ILM, really top class studios, we're facilitating that. So we're helping the artists be noticed by these companies, and a lot of the companies actually use ArtStation as a tool to find new artists. So it's not just the listing jobs and waiting for
So as an artist, what do I
applicants.
specifically do? So I go on the platform and I do what?
The first step is to register. We have a couple of different classes of users. So we have artists. Anyone who uploads artwork into a portfolio is considered an artist, and they can comment on other artists' work. We also have fan user accounts, so that they're there either to appreciate the art, or they might be a recruiter, and basically they don't have the ability to comment, but they're obviously on there. And we have around 3 million unique visitors to the site each month, which
Nice.
is like a small country. So yeah, we actually know from speaking to both artists and studios that a lot of opportunities are being created on that platform.
But it sounds like a lot of what you're both doing really is around portfolio building and building up a body of work that shows
Right.
off what you really do and why that is you. Do you think that's still an important component of, I don't know, getting a job or learning more?
It's the
Why?
central. It's the central.
Why does that make
thing.
such a big difference?
I think any recruiters coming to the site, say it's a studio recruiter or even someone looking for a freelance artist, they need to have proof that you're capable of doing the work that they want done. And with those sorts of studios have a very clear idea of the sort of work that they want to see. So it's sort of like a proof that you can say do stylized characters, or realism, 3D sort of realism type things. So yeah, the portfolio is central, and I know a lot of recruiters, at events like THU, it's a combination of things. They're either sitting down an artist and going through their portfolio and giving them feedback on areas to improve, or they're sitting down to look at the portfolios to see whether they're ready to be recruited. So sometimes the studios are here to help the artist as well as help themselves.
Yeah, you could compare it being an artist like being an immigrant and holding an ID,
Right.
and then getting through the customs, and then if your work is good enough, you're in.
Right. That's your visa.
Yeah, that's your visa.
That's great.
For
So how
work.
do you actually know whether or not your work is good enough?
It's difficult. It's not an easy thing to do, because you might have good work, you might consider the work good, and among your peers, it's going to appear as a good work, but that might not be good enough for what the studio is looking for.
Yeah.
So the best thing you can do is just create art and really treat it as your, again, like almost like your ID. If your life depends on it, whether you're gonna get a job or not.
Yeah.
If you take it really seriously, you're gonna come across failures. You're gonna try, you're gonna fail, you're gonna try again, you're gonna fail, and then eventually you're gonna get good enough for that specific studio for them to say, yeah,
Sure,
you're
we'll
in.
give you a shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we like it. And it's all about timing, and it's all about quality, right? And it's all about what kind of qualities you're presenting for the studio specifically. So you might have an amazing stylized work, but for a studio that creates video games such as, I don't know, Call of Duty,
Sure. It
it's
doesn't
not
help that you're really
useful.
good at making
Yeah,
like Donald
it's
Duck
not really
type.
that useful,
Yeah.
right? And vice versa. You might have an amazing, fantastically rendered and designed realistic work. But if you want to work for, let's say, Riot Games, then, or I don't know Riot Games specifically, but any video game company that has more of a stylized, repertoire of games, they might see like, yes, you're a great artist, but can you prove yourself to actually work within the style of the games that we're creating?
Yeah.
The same thing applies to pretty much any industry, right? If you want to work in film, you have to impress a specific director or producer that works on that film.
Right.
And if you manage to do that, then you'll be hired. It's as simple as that. And there's also other things that come into play, which is your character, whether you're a nice person to talk with, how well you take feedback, and all of those are traits that are secondary, but it's literally your ID. Like, without it, you're not gonna get anywhere. Nobody cares about your face, your who you are, where you come from. Maybe on the legal side of immigration,
Sure.
relocation obviously means more trouble for the company to get you. But
if you're good enough, maybe they're willing to go through that trouble.
that, or they might just work with you remotely.
Sure.
That's something that's happening more and more. But without a really solid work, nothing else really matters.
Right. So I'm reckoning. So imagine a world where you're an artist from 0 to 100, where 100 is like you're the peak performance, and at 0 you're me. And you have to hit like about a 70 to get a job, right? If you're above 70 in your class, you're good enough to work for studios, and you eventually go up and you become senior or whatever. If you're a 30, how can you get yourself to a 40? You're still not good enough to get a job, but how do you do gradual improvement on your work and on your portfolio to gradually become a better artist?
So there's multiple ways to look at it. I think the best approach would be to separate it into like categories. So one would be what kind of people you surround yourself with. Are those only your friends and family that will always say your work is great?
Yeah.
And
My
then
mom thinks my art is amazing.
Of course. And then you get the reality check.
Right.
When I was, I'm self-taught basically, right? So, and everything that I teach is basically my experiences as well, right? So when I was learning whether I'm good or not, I always looked at the best in the industry. And I think because that's where you're gonna work. Like if you wanna work in video games, look at the best concept artists,
So where do you
illustrators.
even find that?
I mean, it's simple as just, what's your favorite game, right? Let's say it's Uncharted or it's World of Warcraft or
Tetris.
I don't know, Tetris or even like League of Legends.
Sure.
League of Legends is the biggest, one of the most popular out of the bigger games, right? The most like the studio games, which is like, I believe like over 100 million players at this point. Check who's working for that company. And you're gonna find those amazing artists that work for that company. Look at their work and then put your portfolio right next to their work and ask yourself if you're that good. And
Is that where somebody like you guys come in?
Pretty much, yeah. So ArtStation was created initially as a closed beta.
Right.
We actually invited a lot of the artists that we'd worked with over the years. Previously, I was the publisher at Ballistic Publishing, which was an art book publisher, and we literally had thousands of artists that we'd worked with over those years. So it was just a really happy coincidence that ArtStation started off with the best of the best in the film and game industries. Yeah.
Sure.
So, and that was, I mean, initially that was intimidating for a lot of artists because they
yeah.
came to the site and they saw this amazing, level of quality. But we have grown substantially. We opened to the public, I think, about 3 months after the initial closed beta. And now we have, the majority of professional artists in the industry are on ArtStation, and you can go and see their work. Some of them are doing both professional and personal work, but a lot have, the time constraints of working in a high pressure studio, so they're not doing a lot of the personal stuff. But
yeah, I guess when you're working 80 hours a week, the last thing you want to do is pick up a pen and go, right, let's do this.
That's the most common thing I hear from artists is that they would love to, but they're just mentally, even creatively exhausted at the end of the week or the end of the day.
So how do you actually find somebody who can help you critique your work, or who can help you, or how do you teach self-critique? Because I feel like your suggestion earlier of putting my work next to somebody else's,
Right.
even if they're stylistically similarly, I feel like learning to read your own work and compare it to how somebody else's work looks, that sounds like a skill that you have to learn somehow.
It starts with surrounding yourself with the right people. So you don't want to surround yourself with only friends and family that will always say, "Oh, it's amazing," you know.
But where do you find those other people?
I mean, events like this, even it's a great opportunity where you can just literally put your work in front of professionals, and they'll tell you, "Well, I mean, it sucks. You have to work on it."
Yes.
They'll tell you exactly what you need to hear. A lot of artists like to be polite. I personally don't like to be polite. I usually say the things as they are.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it hurts you or not. If it hurts you, then that's not my problem.
Sure.
I'm not working for your career. I'm trying to help you. But also, even schools like ours, where we have we do have a component of mentorships, or we do have a pretty nice growing community of artists, our students, and they talk among each other and they help each other to sort of like propel their own skills. And there are other locations, there are other schools that offer that, online schools specifically.
Yeah.
Any kinds of events where you can participate and meet professional artists is always great. But generally, just surrounding yourself with people that are critically thinking, but they're not like complaining,
Right, yeah.
Because there's a difference between complaining and thinking critically. And complaining means you're just saying words that are negative.
Everything's the worst.
I hate it. I hate my job.
Right.
Like that's the worst people you surround yourself. They just exhaust your energy. They take away from your will to do things.
Yeah.
And talk is cheap.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, if they can prove you, if you want to prove yourself with work, right? And you want to improve yourself, and if you have a person that will give you a critique and explain exactly what's wrong with it,
Right. Like specifics, like the
Specifics,
shading
right?
here isn't good, or that hand doesn't look.
exactly.
Work on that kind of
and
thing.
you know what? I'll give you an example. So,
Please.
like all those self-help books that are out there. There's like millions of them, and all of them are valuable, right? But all of them are basically a very subjective way that an author, the guy who written it, or the lady who's written it, it's their own worldview. But when you collectively take them together and overlap,
Right.
you're gonna see some points in which all of them agree.
Right.
Right? And those are the points that you take as your lessons.
Right.
And it applies the same thing when you hear a critique from people. So
It sounds like what you're saying is that you need multiple critiques, multiple mentors,
Exactly.
multiple. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because you might have a person that has a very subjective view on your work. He might like fantasy creatures, and you're creating sci-fi, and he might not necessarily like that.
Yeah.
And that'll be a little biased view, even though he will try to give you an honest opinion. There'll be a little bias
Like
in
there's
it,
too
right?
many light blasters. That's
Right.
crazy. Why is there
But
no
then,
dragons?
if you hear enough opinions, and if you ask 10 people, and 10 people will say your anatomy sucks,
Right.
then it means your anatomy sucks, you
Right.
know? But if there's one person that is saying that, and 9 others saying, I think it looks great, then, then it means it's okay, and it's probably you have to improve it anyways, right?
But I think that's my favorite thing about the art world in general, is that it's possible to go and get that kind of feedback. I mean, if you're applying for pretty much any other job, you have your CV, you have your history, you go in or you send your CV to people, and you get 90% of the time you get no answer. And another load of time you just get like, meh, sorry, not for us kind of thing. Rather than,
Right.
actually, we like what you do, but your communication skills, or we like what you do, but there was a typo in your letter, and that we cannot live with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like tapping into that is really
Yeah.
powerful.
Well, the art industry is a collaborative industry, so you really, you have to be driven. You have to have a certain level of taste. I think that's another important part of the learning process. You have to develop your ability to know what stage you're at. So you can do that through mentors. You can also do that through, personal study. There's never been as much content on the web, available. Gumroad, YouTube. you can sit down and watch, amazing artists, and you can see what their process is. You can see if there's gaps in your process, or how they do things differently, which can give you that idea of where you're at as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the process followed also by people who are really, really good? So in my earlier example, you're a
Sure.
30 and you're trying to get to 40.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
if you're like an 80?
That's undoubted. I mean, Maciej is probably proof, of that concept. He's completely self-taught. So
Right.
yeah, and not just self-taught to 70. We're talking self-taught all the way up to like 99. So
Right.
and well,
I'm 98.
high 90s. Yeah.
But I mean, what are you doing to get yourself up that next? Apart from starting a company that
Again,
teaches
like-
people to.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So there's certain things that I did specifically, apart from just comparing myself to the best and just realizing that I'm far away from being
Right.
there, and then setting up goals and trying to achieve those one by one. You have to like set up a big goal, like I want to be an artist, or
Right.
I want to work for films, I want to work for that, whatever that is. That's your big goal.
Right.
And then break it down into smaller steps. You're not gonna climb the staircase in one huge hop. You're
Right.
you want to go step by step. Maybe you'll be able to go 2 or 3 steps at the time, but then you're gonna get tired.
Right.
Quicker, right?
But do you feel it's clear to artists what it is they need to work on? I feel like if I'm trying to
It's
learn
not.
100 meter
It's not.
and I can only do it in 20 seconds now and I want to get to 9, it's like, well, it's really clear what I need to do. I need
It's
to run
not, but
faster,
that's why I've mentioned, like, when you look at the self-taught books, like self-helping books, there's so many of them, but they all when you read them all and layer them one on top of another, you will see that there are certain points that repeat over and over and over.
Right.
And the best thing you can do for yourself, especially if you're not going through like a regular learning system, which I think like your brick and mortar schools are slowly fading away.
Right.
Nobody cares about your degree. It doesn't matter in this industry.
Is that true, you think?
This is the industry of meritocracy. I've never been asked if I have bachelor's degree.
Huh.
Nobody
Does that
cares.
ring true to you as well?
Who cares?
That it's like people don't really.
The one case where it might matter is with immigration. So
That's the
a
only
lot of
case.
countries,
Yeah, I
agree.
a lot of
I agree
countries
with that.
have that as like the
Right.
minimum. So I think in every other aspect it is merit.
But I do not have a degree, and I'm here.
Yes, but you were up in the high 90s, so yeah.
But I think the interesting thing there is that it feels like schools often have a false incentive there, where if you bring somebody into the country for a 3-year degree and it turns out they're terrible in year 1, you can boot them out and forfeit the last 2 years of tuition fees, or you can keep passing them. You come out the other side with a degree, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that a studio will hire you.
The
It's
sad
still down
fact-
to the portfolio.
The sad fact is there's some very large schools that are just knocking out artists who are not at the level of employability. Like the studios need to
Yeah.
bring them up another level.
Right.
But there are schools like Nomon who actually have fairly rigorous portfolio reviews before a student gets into the school.
Right.
that's
So you're
sort of
good when you come in,
screening.
you're great when you go out, kind of thing.
Pre-screening, and they also have placement rates that are quite high. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's near 100, but if you're going to some schools, you will have a good metric of how many students are being placed in the industry. So that gives you a bit of an idea of
Right.
where you might get to, or what you can expect from the level of the teachers.
Yeah, that's like a big subject in terms of like, going to an art college, especially in the United States, where it costs you a lot of money. Like, you have to really look into what this college does for you specifically. And Noman would be a great example of things done right. You're gonna take if you have finances to support yourself and actually take the college without taking a loan, great. If you have to take a loan, you have to really, think about how much the money you're taking in as a loan, how much is going to benefit you in the future. Same goes to schools like Art Center. Art Center is a great example of things going correctly because you have the best in the industry teaching there. So
Right.
you're not only going there for learning experience and actually learning from the best, but also for the connections. which a lot of online schools do these days for a fraction of the cost as well, right? The difference is the structure, you know, how much you're getting out of specific things. And do you need to have that structured environment where you're basically, because you're spending so much money, you know you have to push yourself, right? So there's a lot of choices you have to make. The best thing you can do for yourself is to learn and educate yourself about everything. Don't just like follow into one trap where you only look at one aspect of education, right? Instead of reading one book, read 10 of them and see where they overlap.
Right.
What are the points that everyone is making? And those are the most important points you have to apply to your workflow, to your way of, you know, learning. Especially like, you know, you were surprised that nobody cares about
that's not my
paper.
world. But
but
it might be
thing
true in
is,
art, right?
See, the reason is it's going to become more and more apparent is that a lot of workforce these days is going into freelance.
Right.
There's less and less demand on relocation.
Right.
I know a lot of artists that work in the film industry and they never have to move. So, yeah, I mean, this is a meritocracy business, you know. If your art is great, you're gonna get hired.
That's incredibly refreshing. I mean, it just means that you have a real chance at delivering on the things you really want to make happen, you know?
Yeah, it's all on you.
So what is the one thing you would recommend? So you've talked about finding the red thread, finding the touch points that a lot of people agree on. And we've been talking about, you know, get a lot of different feedback from other people. Can you use these platforms to actually find new people to get feedback from?
Sure. So ArtStation has a fairly good comment system. So really, the purpose of it is to get feedback from your contemporaries.
Awesome.
So the nice thing is that we have like the full range of skill sets on ArtStation. So you have students, you have people who have been in the industry a couple of years, and you have art directors, technical directors, and often they're actually readily happy to give back and give comments to artists who they might see as sort of something that says this person is at this level, and I think if I just give them a bit of a nudge, a bit of encouragement even, then or technical advice, that'll help.
Right.
And the comments, like I couldn't tell you how many there are, but I'm sure it's in the hundreds of thousands or even millions now.
Yeah, you get a lot of those.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Right, guys, I think that's us actually out of time. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.